Welcome to Backseat Confessions Podcast. Slide into the backseat as we listen to mostly anonymous strangers tell us stories from their lives. I'm a rideshare driver in Atlanta, and the people getting in my car have absolutely no idea I'm going to ask them to share. My commitment to you is to tell at least a snippet of virtually every story recorded in my car in the order they were told to me. My hope is that you laugh, cringe, cry, but mostly connect to these amazing people. You may find a piece of your own story or just feel more connected to the rest of us. Join us, won't you? Hey there, guys. I'm JC, and welcome to Backseat Confessions Podcast. In this intro episode, I want to take just a few minutes to give you an idea of what this is all about, and then tell you a little bit about me and the genesis of this project. I've described this podcast as if Taxicab Confessions on HBO and Humans of New York had a baby, it would be this podcast. I'm a rideshare driver in Atlanta, and I've essentially turned the passenger seat of my car into a mini podcast studio. At the start of every episode, you'll hear this. It is the actual sounds of me grabbing my keys off the rack and opening the house door, and then, of course, getting in my car and starting it up. My drill is to pick up riders like any normal driver would, but if I feel like my riders might be a good candidate, I ask them to tell me a story from their life. If they agree, most of the time we will come up with an alias, I hand them a mic, and then get their consent and record whatever it is they want to share, all while we're driving. Sometimes their stories are so incredible that you may think they were prepped or made up, but keep in mind that these riders are randomly chosen by an app, and the riders have no forewarning whatsoever that they will be asked to share. I believe this helps keep the stories as raw and real as possible. My goal is to try to tell at least a piece of nearly every story in the exact order it was told to me. This is why the stories can be so wildly different from the one before and after it. It's kind of like you get the full spectrum of humanity represented here. So, before every story, you will hear what the story number is and the time and date stamp, along with the actual sound of opening, getting in, and closing the rear passenger side door of my car. My personal life story is a unique and crazy one that I want to talk about more on other platforms at other times, but I will share here that 2020 was the hardest year of my life, and not because of COVID. Early in the year, I had a traumatic interaction with the U.S. injustice system, as I now sometimes refer to it, and discovered how being wrongfully accused by the system can virtually crush you. By far, though, the most devastating loss of 2020 was my oldest son deciding he didn't want to be here anymore. He was one of the most amazing people I've ever known. On top of all that, I thought I'd finally found my dream job in late 2019, but then it was gone quite suddenly, along with so much else in 2020. Midway through the year, I started doing rideshare and licking my wounds, an idea that I'd done nothing with years before. Side note, I can be a professional procrastinator. It started to come back to me, this idea. And the idea, of course, was Backseat Confessions Podcast. My wife encouraged me to start making it happen, but I ignored her, as it specifies to do on page 864 in the Manual on Marriage. So, One night in October, I'm smoking cigars on our dock with a couple of my close friends, and I tell them about the idea, and they end up being the catalyst to start actually making this thing happen. I started recording the first stories that same month. Lastly, I'll share 4 of my, admittedly, lofty hopes for this project. First, I want it to be entertaining. Whether you laugh, cringe, cry, it's all good. Secondly, I discovered that every so often, this podcast gave someone a safe place to be vulnerable and share a story they normally wouldn't. And that was a really cool discovery for me. I've had several actually thank me for giving them a space to share their story. Thirdly, when I listen to someone share from their heart that I may consider in air quotes an other, hearing their story helps bring down perceived walls, and I just love that. And my fourth hope is that the power of story to heal, to make you feel less alone, to be inspired, it's one of the ways that we engage in repairing our broken world. And that, my friends, is pretty freaking awesome. As far as casting a little vision, someday I would like to see this become an interactive community of sorts, where we talk about how stories affect us and maybe even find ways to help certain writers that have specific needs. In addition, at some point, I'd like to create a space for some of us to gather to share our own stories in person. I have all sorts of thoughts on that one. In the meantime, though, I hope you enjoy sliding into the back seat and coming along for this journey. And who knows, maybe sometime you'll find yourself in my actual back seat, and along the way, you can share whatever it is that's on your mind. So please like, comment, follow, and share with as many adults as possible. Thank you so much.